The first time I felt it, that jolt in my gut, was at gate A11 in Seattle, Tacoma, right before we boarded. My name is Blake. I'm 38 years old, born and raised in Seattle, and I've been an architect for nearly 15 years. The kind that obsesses over symmetry, lines, and things making sense. But nothing made sense about the way that guy kept looking at my wife. Serena stood next to me, scrolling through her phone with one hand, her carry-on tucked neatly under her other arm. She was dressed in that effortlessly put-together way that always made people glance twice. Linen pants, a sleeveless white blouse, and a tiny gold chain that glinted against her collarbone. We were headed to a corporate retreat in Maui, something her firm put on every 2 years. Spouses were invited. It was supposed to be a little luxury mixed with networking, dinners, and light strategy meetings. I'd even taken the week off just to be there with her. That was the plan. Then I noticed him. Younger guy. Mid-30s maybe. Tan, athletic build, fitted polo and aviators on his head like he was starring in some Hawaiian tourism ad. He stood a few rows down, sipping a smoothie and talking with another couple from the company, but every few seconds his eyes flicked to Serena. And worse, she looked back. Not a glance. Not a quick polite smile. No, this was different. Familiar. He smirked. She dropped her eyes. There was a tiny tilt to her head when he walked past us that didn't sit right. Like they were sharing a joke without words. I didn't say anything. On the flight, Serena claimed she was nauseous, blamed it on the turbulence, and gingerly unbuckled her seatbelt 30 minutes after takeoff. I'm just going to stretch in the back for a bit, she mumbled. Want me to come with you? I offered. No. You should rest, she said, forcing a smile. I'll be fine. But 10 minutes later, when I got up to use the lavatory, I saw her. Not alone. Not stretching. She was with him. They stood near the galley, just out of view of most passengers. He leaned against the bulkhead, arms folded. She was close. Too close. Her hand brushed his arm. Light, casual, like it didn't mean anything. He laughed and reached around her waist for a second. Her body leaned into his just a little. That's when it hit me. That sick, sinking certainty. I knew. I didn't confront her. Not on the plane. I went back to my seat, clenched my jaw, and stared at the tray table for the next 5 hours. My thoughts kept looping one word. Dorian. The drive from Kahului Airport to the resort should have been relaxing. Palm trees waving lazily, ocean flickering to our left, the kind of landscape you're supposed to breathe in and feel lighter. But all I could feel was that same tightness in my chest. The image of Serena with that man, Dorian, I was sure of it now, playing like a film reel in my head. She barely said a word on the way. Her face was lit by her phone screen, fingers tapping constantly. Every few minutes, she'd laugh softly to herself or tilt the screen away from me like she was protecting state secrets. I didn't ask who she was texting. I already knew. You good? I finally asked. She glanced over quickly, startled. Yeah, just checking in with work stuff. Didn't you say this trip was supposed to be unplugged? She paused a beat too long. It is. Just tying up some last things. I nodded, eyes back on the road. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. I'd always trusted Serena. We'd been together 10 years. Married for 7. She was smart, polished, ambitious, everything I admired. But now all I could think about was her standing there, tucked into that man's space like she belonged. When we pulled into the resort, all valet parking and chilled towels, she acted normal. Smiled at the staff, complimented the view, even kissed my cheek once. But it felt hollow, staged. Once we got into the suite, she tossed her bag onto the bed and disappeared into the bathroom. You want to grab dinner in a bit? I called. She hesitated. I'm not sure. I think I just got my period. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the door. That excuse, the timing, the suddenness, it felt too neat. Too convenient. You need anything? I asked. Yeah, she said through the door. I'll head down to the gift shop, see if they've got stuff. She came out a minute later, pulling her hair into a ponytail, phone still in hand. Be back in a bit. The door closed behind her, and I stood there for a moment, just listening to the silence. Then I moved fast. Her purse was on the chair. Open. She never left it like that. I hesitated. I told myself not to, but I did it anyway. I reached in and found her phone. It wasn't locked. What I found, I still remember every word. The texts were from Dorian. Dorian, missed you this morning. You looked so good in that blouse I wanted to tear it off right there. Serena, Patience, babe. Tonight's ours. Dorian, can't wait to taste you again. Serena, he still thinks I've got cramps. What an idiot. I put the phone down gently. My hands were shaking. It wasn't just betrayal. It was mockery. She wasn't just cheating, she was laughing about it. I stood there for a long time, heart pounding, breath shallow. And then I started planning. Not a fight. Not a confrontation. Something smarter. That night, I pretended to fall asleep early. I even went as far as dimming the lights and pulling the covers halfway over my chest. Serena was in the bathroom when I shut my eyes and started the act. She came out a few minutes later, already dressed, not in pajamas like I expected, but a black dress with gold accents I hadn't seen in months. She moved quietly, like a thief. She lingered by the bed for a moment, maybe checking if I was actually out. I kept my breathing slow and steady. She leaned over and whispered, "Sorry, babe. You looked so tired. I'll just grab a drink at the bar. Love you." She didn't even wait for a reaction. She slipped out like it was nothing. 10 minutes later, I was dressed and out the door, following at a distance. The resort bar was built for seduction. Dim lights, curved walls, low music. I spotted her immediately, perched on a bar stool, one leg crossed over the other, smiling that slow, practiced smile. And Dorian, of course, sitting way too close. His hand was already on her knee. I slipped into a corner booth near a planter wall and pulled out my phone. Not to text, to record. Zoomed in just enough. I hit video and steadied my arm on the edge of the table. She leaned into him, whispering something that made him laugh. Then her hand ran slowly down his chest. His fingers brushed her neck, then slid lower. They weren't being discreet. Maybe they thought they didn't have to be. Maybe they thought I was snoring back in our room like some clueless idiot. But I wasn't. I was documenting every second. When they stood to leave, he placed his hand on her lower back, steering her out like she was his. They kissed before the elevator doors closed. Not a peck, a long, drawn-out kiss. My phone captured all of it. I waited 30 seconds, then followed. I kept to the side halls and watched them from behind a sculpture near the elevator bank. They didn't even check if anyone was around. They went to the East Wing. Room 423. I memorized it instantly. I waited outside for 15 minutes. Long enough to be sure. I crept up the hallway, just close enough to hear. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The giggles, the low moaning. Then it got louder, clearer. I stepped back and raised my phone again. I couldn't see much through the blinds, but I caught grainy shadows and a few distinct sounds. It was enough. Combined with the bar footage, it would tell the story loud and clear. I should have been broken, but I wasn't. I was furious, focused. Something inside me had shifted. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was about strategy, precision, payback. By the time I made it back to our suite, I already knew my next move. I knew where Dorian's room was. I knew Serena's schedule. I knew how to be invisible when I needed to. Let them keep laughing. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The next morning, I acted like nothing was wrong. Serena woke up late, stretched like she'd actually slept, and padded barefoot into the kitchenette. "You want coffee?" she asked, voice breezy. "Sure," I said, keeping my eyes on the TV. "About last night. Sorry I passed out on you. I feel like crap for missing dinner." She gave a soft laugh. "Don't worry about it. I just grabbed something at the bar. Nothing special." Nothing special. Right. I waited until midday to make my move. Around noon, I brought up a couple's massage ad I saw in the resort guide and suggested we book something to make up for the night before. She hesitated. I do have that breakout meeting with the execs this afternoon," she said, biting her lip. "Right. But how about a spa treatment instead? You deserve a break. I'll make it up to you for ruining dinner." She looked at me, unsure. "I already booked it," I said, handing her the spa receipt. "Private room. Ocean view. Complimentary champagne." That sealed it. Guilt or not, Serena couldn't resist being pampered. By 1:30, she was gone, draped in a white robe and spa slippers, humming to herself as she left the suite. I gave it 10 minutes, then sprang into action. Her beach tote sat near the dresser, tucked into the bottom, beneath a rolled-up towel and a travel-size sunscreen. I found it. A plastic keycard marked for 23. Dorian's room. Of course, she hadn't left it in her purse. Too risky. But she'd hidden it like a teenager stashing cigarettes, and it told me everything I needed to know. I pocketed the key and left through the rear service hallway, slipping past the pool and up the back stairwell. No cameras there. No staff. Just me and the plan. Room 423 opened on the first try. Inside, the place looked sterile, neat, barely lived in. Dorian didn't travel heavy. But what he lacked in luggage, he made up for in hubris. The minibar had 3 emptied whiskey bottles. On the dresser, a folder full of printed headshots, half in color, half in black and white. Each photo was of a woman, all smiling, all well-dressed. Some I recognized from the welcome mixer. Wives of other execs. I started taking photos with my phone. Headshots, messages, emails open on his tablet. He hadn't even logged out. One folder was labeled Fun. Inside were dozens of screenshots from apps, encrypted chats, selfies, even screenshots of flight confirmations. One in particular showed Serena, dressed in the same black outfit from the night before, leaning into Dorian in a bathroom mirror. I copied everything onto a USB drive I'd brought. Then, for good measure, I uploaded duplicates to 2 anonymous cloud links, both set to timed release. By the time I locked the room and walked back toward our suite, I felt oddly calm. Focused. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. It was bigger than that. Serena and Dorian thought they were untouchable. But I was building something now, and every piece of their arrogance was a brick in my design. That evening, Serena came back from the spa glowing. Cheeks flushed, skin dewy, wrapped in one of those white robes that made her look like she had never done a dishonest thing in her life. Best massage of my life, she sighed as she slipped off her sandals. Seriously, I needed that. I'm glad, I said. I handed her a glass of pineapple juice with a wedge of lime, pretending it was a spontaneous touch. She took it without suspicion. We sat on the lanai for a bit. She babbled on about some exfoliating scrub and how her masseuse was like a wizard. I just nodded, keeping the smile on my face. Feel like dinner tonight? I asked when the sun dipped low. She hesitated. Just for a second. Maybe depends how I feel. Right. Depends on whether Dorian texts first. Around 7, she got up to go for a walk. No mention of Dorian. No need. She didn't even glance my way as she picked out a new dress, tousled her hair in the mirror, and spritzed perfume behind her ears. I stayed back, cracked a beer, and waited. By 7:30, I was tailing her again. This time I kept more distance, weaving through the resort's side paths and service entrances until I reached the bar. I picked a stool at the far end, half shielded by a column of bamboo and flowering vines. They were already there. Serena and Dorian sat at a small table near the bar's corner, under a paper lantern that cast a warm gold glow across their drinks. She wore the blue halter dress I had bought her 2 birthdays ago. He was in khaki linen pants and a white shirt, 2 buttons undone like he thought he was in a cologne ad. Their laughter grated against me, but I didn't move. I waited until the server brought fresh cocktails. Both drinks had umbrellas. Mine didn't. I stepped out from the shadows and approached the bar, smiling at the bartender. Hey, could I get 2 of those Mai Tais to go? I asked, nodding toward the tray of untouched drinks behind him. I'll bring him to my wife and her friend. They're over there. I waved toward their table casually, not too directly. Sure thing, he said, not even blinking. I stepped to the side, waited until he turned, then slipped 2 crushed melatonin tabs into each glass. Pharmaceutical grade. Slow dissolving. Tasteless. By the time I delivered the drinks to their table, hey babe, thought you might want a refill. Serena barely looked surprised. Dorian smiled like I was a butler. Thanks, man, he said, not even making eye contact. Of course, I said, nodding to both of them. Enjoy. I went back to my shadowed spot and watched them drink. Sip by sip, laughing, leaning in. Dorian whispered something in her ear, and Serena's hand slid over his thigh under the table. I clenched my fist, but not from pain anymore. They started getting sluggish about 30 minutes in. Serena's posture shifted, looser, head tilted. Dorian blinked more slowly. He rubbed his eyes once. Then again. Should we go? She slurred softly. Yeah, think so. He mumbled, his hand groping for his wallet, but giving up. They staggered toward the elevator like 2 kids after prom. I waited 5 minutes. Then I followed. I used the spare key again. Let myself in. They were out cold on the bed, half-dressed. I worked quickly, silently. First, Dorian's wallet. I emptied the cash, scanned his ID, tossed the rest in the bathroom trash. Then his laptop, wiped clean with a flash drive kill stick. Gone. His phone too. Reset, SIM removed, tossed off the balcony into the jungle below. Serena's purse? I took her phone charger, her ID, her keycard, left the makeup bag untouched. Then, I uploaded everything. All the photos, screenshots, footage, cloud links timed for 48-hour release. One to Serena's boss, another to Dorian's firm, and several anonymous drops to key husbands and wives from the corporate circle. I walked out with nothing but a small USB and a dead stare. The final phase was in motion, and by the time they woke up, they'd be broke, disconnected, and surrounded by fire. The next morning, I ordered room service for one. Eggs, black coffee, papaya slices. I sat on the balcony watching the sunrise bleed orange across the waves, feeling more centered than I had in weeks. The air was humid and warm, and beneath the peaceful silence of the resort, I knew a storm was coming. It started around 10 a.m. The first cloud links released themselves right on schedule. One by one, the files sent out, to Dorian's firm's HR department, to the personal emails of 3 married executives whose wives were in his photo folder, and to Serena's direct manager, tagged with the subject line, "Confidential Conduct Concern, Maui Retreat." Then came the physical drops. Late the night before, I had slipped sealed envelopes under the doors of 5 rooms where I knew betrayed spouses were staying. Some of the women I'd seen in Dorian's folder, others I recognized from the mixer. Each envelope held a still from the bar footage, a few printed messages, and a QR code linking to the rest. No notes, no names, just the truth. And now, all I had to do was wait. By noon, I heard the first shout from down the hall. A woman's voice, panicked, furious. Someone slammed a door. At 12:07, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't answer. At 12:09, Serena's name lit up my screen. I silenced it. At 12:10, a resort staffer radioed someone for help near the pool. 2 guests found disoriented and confused in Suite 423. I almost laughed. By the time the sun was high, I completed the last steps. Dorian's passport? Gone. Swiped from the top drawer the night before. Tossed in the ocean wrapped in a hotel napkin. His wallet? Emptied of cash and credit cards, then flushed down a maintenance grate. Serena's ID and phone charger? Both tucked deep inside a potted plant by the poolside bar, underneath a layer of wet soil. Enough to leave her stranded. Lost. Dependent. Before checkout, I guided her, still groggy and disoriented, down to the pool deck. She could barely string together a sentence. I sat her gently in a lounge chair near the shallow end, draped a towel over her shoulders, and kissed her forehead like everything was fine. "You sleep here for a bit," I said. "I'll go check on breakfast." She nodded sluggishly, eyes half closed. I walked away without looking back. Inside the suite, I finished packing. Just my clothes, my laptop, my watch. Everything Serena had ever bought me. Shirts, shoes, even the little travel cologne she insisted I bring. I left behind. I left the room pristine. At the front desk, I smiled and handed over both keycards. "Just heading out a little early," I said. I tipped the bellhop generously and walked to the taxi stand. As I rode away, I turned once toward the pool. Serena was still there, asleep in a chair, purse hanging open and useless by her feet. No ID, no phone, no money, no Dorian, and absolutely no idea that by the time they got their bearings, they'd be known for exactly what they were. Publicly, permanently, irrevocably. My revenge was surgical, and it had just hit publish. I landed back in Seattle just after midnight. The city was quiet, dim under low clouds, like it somehow knew I needed silence. I didn't go home. I didn't even text Serena to tell her I'd arrived safely. Not that she would have noticed, considering she was probably still piecing together what had happened. Instead, I drove straight to my office downtown, parked in the underground garage, and used my keycard one last time. I wasn't there to work. I was there to erase myself. Over the next 4 hours, I backed up all my files, transferred key projects to my junior architect with a pre-scheduled email, and drafted my resignation letter to the partners. No notice, no explanation. Just, "I've decided to step away from the firm and start a new chapter. I wish you all the best." Then I set the email to send the next morning. After that, I visited our joint bank accounts. Over the past month, I had slowly begun transferring funds into private holdings under my name. Some to a personal LLC I'd registered in Wyoming, others to a trust Serena didn't know existed. I'd been subtle, discreet, but now I finished the job. The last wire took 60 seconds. I closed the laptop with a finality that felt like slamming a door. I slept in my truck that night, parked near the marina. Didn't matter. I barely closed my eyes anyway. By dawn, I was back at the house, the one Serena and I had shared for 6 years in Capitol Hill. She still wasn't back. I figured she'd be stranded another day or two, trying to locate her ID, arguing with the airline, probably still blaming the resort or Dorian or anyone but herself. Good. I went inside, straight to the closet. I packed fast. One suitcase for clothes, one for personal keepsakes, my grandfather's watch, my old drafting tools, a box of photos from my college days. I left everything Serena had ever bought me. Watches, jackets, luggage, untouched. Like she didn't exist. Then I grabbed the last box, a hard drive with all the footage. The recordings. The messages. I didn't delete them. I just locked them away. Before leaving, I set a single envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a note. Don't call. Don't look for me. I'm done. And a USB. No password. Just the truth. Then I took the truck to a private buyer I'd found online, cash only, and signed over the title. The guy didn't ask questions. I didn't offer any. With the money, I rented a storage unit under a friend's name, dropped off my suitcases, bought a burner phone, wiped my own. By evening, I was gone. To Colorado, small mountain town, quiet, out of reach. I'd already lined up work through a college friend who ran a boutique design firm. No contracts, just handshake deals. I liked that. Before I left, I scheduled one final message to Serena. It would send the day after she got back. It read, "We could have rebuilt something. I wanted to believe you were worth that. But now I know better. Don't look for me. I'm just a ghost now." And I was. The man she married? Gone. Seattle had been in the middle of a cold snap when I left, but by the time Serena was due back, a full-blown snowstorm had rolled in. The timing was perfect. Nature was giving me cover, a convenient explanation, because what I was about to do needed no trace. A week before I left, I had started prepping the house. Quietly, methodically. While Serena was working late and texting Dorian under the sheets, I had been down in the basement taking measurements. That's the thing about being an architect. You learn how things are built, and more importantly, how to make them fail. Our house was one of those trendy, modern builds with sharp corners, glass railings, and an open-concept main floor. She loved that place. Posted about it constantly. My dream space, she once called it. It was about to become a memory. In the basement, I had reinforced the wall studs with hidden spring-loaded hinges, the kind used in movie sets or demolition training. Then I rigged a pulley system that snaked through the crawl space and connected to the front door's deadbolt mechanism. All hidden behind drywall panels I reinstalled myself. When someone unlocked the front door, just once, the tension would shift, the system would engage, and the key load-bearing points in the main floor would destabilize. The collapse wouldn't be total, but it would be enough. Enough to snap beams, shatter windows, bring down the staircase, and split the drywall like a cracked egg. From the outside, it would look like a structural failure. Snow-laden roof. Cheap modern construction. A freak accident. And the best part? No one would get hurt. Just Serena's pride. The day she flew back, I made one last stop before disappearing. The neighbor across the street. An older guy named Don who spent most days in his recliner watching the neighborhood like a retired security guard. "Hey, Don," I'd said, standing on his porch with a smile. "My wife's getting back from Maui today, and I planned a little surprise, kind of a welcome home thing. Would you mind filming it from your window? Just in case I missed the expression on her face?" He laughed. "Sure, man. Just tell me when to start." I texted him 3 hours later. She just pulled into the driveway. "Start filming now." I watched it unfold from afar. Serena, wheeling her luggage up the snowy walkway, no idea what was coming. She fumbled with her gloves, dug out her keys, and leaned into the lock like she always did. She turned it once. Click. The system kicked in. The center beam in the living room cracked like a bone. The front windows popped. The upper staircase sagged, then folded in half. Drywall peeled from the ceiling. The balcony railing snapped, and the entire main level caved into itself like a dying lung. She screamed, backpedaled, slipped in the snow. But she was fine, just shaken, maybe a bruise on her wrist. Don caught it all. His grainy video showed her scrambling backward into the street, phone clutched to her chest, eyes wide with disbelief. He zoomed in on the ruined house. Our house. and said something low into the mic, Jesus. I received the footage 2 hours later. I watched it once, then again, and on the third viewing, I muted the audio and just stared. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just nodded, like an artist signing the final corner of a canvas. The structure had failed, just as designed. Collapse on cue. Weeks passed. Back in Colorado, the snow fell softly outside the cabin I was renting. The days were slow. The nights were quiet. And for the first time in years, I slept soundly. No texts buzzing, no tension in my jaw, no pretending I didn't see what I'd already known for far too long. Seattle might have been buried in wreckage, but I had moved on. In every way that mattered. I didn't have social media, didn't watch the news. But updates still reached me, through whispers, secondhand messages, and one particularly detailed call from my younger brother, Nate, who had helped coordinate parts of the fallout. He was the only one I trusted, and even he didn't know everything. You did it, Nate said one night, his voice low with both awe and concern. Jesus, Blake, you really pulled it off. I didn't do anything, I said flatly. Gravity did, and gravity had done plenty. Serena came back to a house in pieces, no phone, no ID, no money. She was stranded, humiliated, and completely alone. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst came 10 days later. She was pregnant. Nate found out through one of her mutual friends, some HR rep at the firm who leaked it after Serena tried to quietly request emergency leave. The DNA test was undeniable. Not mine. Dorian's. Except Dorian wasn't picking up the phone anymore. He had vanished from the company after the cloud links were released. Word was, 3 different husbands had confronted him back in San Diego. One of them was a former Marine. There was talk of broken ribs, dental reconstruction, legal threats. No official charges. Just a resignation letter and a disappearance. Dorian was done. Serena, too, had been let go. Quietly. HR speak for we can't afford this mess in our quarterly review. She was stripped of her corporate perks, lost her housing allowance, and was currently couch surfing, cut off by her own parents once they heard about the affair and the destruction that followed. Pregnant, unemployed, alone. I didn't pity her, but I didn't celebrate either. It wasn't about watching her suffer. It was about balance, justice, closure. As for me, I started over. The job in Colorado was small-time compared to what I'd left behind, but I liked it. Custom cabins, energy-efficient remodels, boutique shops for old clients who wanted mountain retreats. No board meetings. No office politics. Just design, tools, and quiet. I lived in a furnished rental for the first 2 months, then signed a lease on a small A-frame tucked between evergreens. I kept a low profile, no internet in my name, no open accounts. Nate helped move what little I kept into storage nearby. No paper trail, no forwarding address. I didn't tell anyone else, not even my parents, because I didn't want reconciliation. I didn't want explanations. I wanted distance. I wanted peace. And I got it. Sometimes I'd think about the past, about Serena's laugh before it turned into a weapon, about Dorian's smug grin at the bar. I'd feel the phantom pang of betrayal, sharp and deep. But it faded, and what remained was the architecture of it all, the clean lines of planning, the precision of cause and effect. I had designed their destruction the way I'd once designed homes. With vision, with intent, and with control. Serena might have carried Dorian's child. She might have even hoped it would tether him to her, a new beginning after the collapse. But in the end, she got what she gave me. Nothing. As for me, I had no interest in revenge anymore, because I'd already finished the project, and I'd walked away before the dust even settled.